Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we're going to talk about crankbaits, specifically the difference between round-billed crankbaits and square-billed crankbaits. They both do two completely different things and can be used in different situations. Both are highly effective at triggering bites. We're going to get into both of them a little bit and show you how, when, where, and why you can use them. Let's get to it. The two crankbaits I chose for this are from the Rapala lineup. One is the Rapala DT6. The other one is a newer crankbait from them, and this is the OG Rocco. Now, the DT6 is one of my favorite crankbaits of all times. It's just a consistent fish producer. I don't care what color you throw it in. Now, as far as the DT6 goes, this would be a round bill crankbait. Now, what round bills do are they are designed to get down and roll over things. A DT on a DT6 stands for dives to. So you have the DT4, the DT6, you get the idea. Now, crankbaits are rated in most cases on 12-pound monofilament line. So the DT6 on a long cast on 12-pound monofilament line can get down to approximately 6 foot at the longest part of its cast. Now, when you're using deeper crankbaits, if you want the crankbait to get down a little bit deeper, then you can use different lines. In other words, fluorocarbon line sinks. So on a long cast, I may be able to get that DT6 down at that 6 foot depth and have it maintain that depth for a longer period of time than I would on monofilament, because monofilament line floats. So with fluorocarbon, since it sinks, I can probably maintain that depth a little bit longer. Now, if I want the crankbait to go shallower, I may even up my pound test. Instead of throwing 12, I may throw 14. We're going to get into that a little bit more when we're talking about square bills. But as far as round bills go, when I'm using a round bill crankbait, I usually, depending on what my bottom is going to be, if it's going to be a hard bottom, then I'm going to want the round bill to go a little bit deeper than the area that I'm fishing. So if I'm fishing 5 foot deep, well, then a DT6 would be a great choice, because I want it bouncing off of everything or rolling over it. And again, that's what that round bill is going to do. Now, if I'm fishing a softer bottom, I'm going to want a crankbait that is going to run a little bit shallower, obviously, because if I didn't, it's going to be digging into the bottom. So maybe a DT4 would work in that sense. Now, in that situation, so if I'm, say for example, I'm fishing a softer bottom. If I'm throwing a DT4, although I'm probably going to be able to catch fish on a consistent retrieve, that's not what I'm going to do in most cases. It's going to be a lot of stop and go, or even reeling, pulling the bait, reeling, pulling it again. I want to do something different. Remember something about lures. Any lure that you fish, it's not always the action of the lure, it's the absence of motion or that pause that triggers that strike. Give an example. Everybody knows about jerk baits. A constant retrieve is jerk, jerk, pause. When do you get the strike? It's on that pause, right? That's in most cases when it happens. That is the absence of motion. That's what triggers the bite. So think about that when you're throwing a crankbait. Although a straight retrieve can work, in a lot of cases, you're bouncing off the bottom, stop, the bait's going to float up. And the cool thing about balsa, it has different properties than the ABS plastic of regular crankbaits. What I like about balsa is it has a tendency to back up and rise slowly. That is an awesome triggering aspect for this lure. One of the reasons that this lineup has been so successful over the years. When that bait is paused, it'll hit something, you pause it, it'll sit there for a second and start to back up and rise slowly. A great triggering for largemouth, smallmouth, walleyes, whatever you're fishing for. Just remember, when you're fishing baits like crankbaits, it's not always the action of the lure that triggers a strike, it's that absence of motion. I do that with spinner baits, I do that with bladed jigs, topwaters, anything. Occasional pause, occasional pull, and a pause. Do something different. Remember something, fish do not think. They do not think. They simply react to their environment. So when you make a bait pause or stop, that is changing from that constant motion, that is what's going to trigger that strike. When you fish a lot of lures in that stop and go or making it do something different, you're going to notice that you're going to get a lot more strikes. You're making fish react to that lure. Remember, fish only strike for two reasons. One is out of hunger, and two is out of reacting to something. If we were just fishing for fish that were hungry, we wouldn't catch as many as we do by making them react. That pause or that pull, doing something different with that bait is what is going to cause you to get more strikes. And that's why crankbaits are so great, because you can do a lot of different things with them as far as making fish react to them. I can be banging that bait across the bottom, stop it, let it float up, go to start again, and a lot of times that's when you're going to get that strike. So remember, when it comes to round bill baits, hard bottom, you want a bait that's going to go a little bit deeper than the bottom that you're fishing. On a soft bottom, you want a crankbait that's going to go a little bit shallower, and you're really going to start incorporating that stop and go or changing up the action so you just don't get a constant retrieve. The more you get away from that constant retrieve, in most cases when it comes to crankbaits, and make that bait do something different, the more strikes you're going to get. Remember something, there's a difference between fishing a crankbait and working one. The more you work a crankbait, the more strikes you're going to get. Now when it comes to square bill crankbaits, square bills are meant to deflect. Where the round bill we just discussed will roll over things, the square bill, when it hits a piece of cover, will deflect. So it could go one way or the other. The cool thing about the circuit board lip that is on the OG Rocco is that if you notice how the lip is designed compared to where the hooks are, the lip comes down a little bit further than that front hook. And again, the way it's designed, when it hits a piece of cover, it's literally going to lift up and over, or deflecting one way or the other, but it protects that front hook from getting snagged. Now, will you snag up with crankbaits? Well, obviously, sure you will. But the cool thing about this is square bills, especially the two that Rapala has designed, the BX Brat as well as the OG Rocco, I call both of these my all-terrain crankbaits. These are the two best crankbaits I've ever used as far as getting through in a round cover. When I'm throwing a square bill, for instance, on a lay-down tree or near a brush pile or a beaver house, whatever. The cool thing about that square bill is that when I throw it in there, I'm not going to be cranking it down really fast. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be worming it through there. And with that bill, that is going to protect that front hook so I can get through there a lot more without getting snagged as often. When I'm throwing a crankbait in thick brush, and I do that a lot, especially in the fall. I will do it in the spring too, but especially in the fall, it's that triggering aspect again. I'm going to be throwing this in a little bit heavier line, where a lot of times on deep diving crankbaits, I may throw 12 or 10 pound test. In most cases, it's 12. But when it comes to square bills like this, I'm throwing usually 14 pound test. And a lot of times it's monofilament. Again, monofilament floats, so I'm going to be using that to keep the bait up. I don't need it to go deep, and I can get away with a little heavier pound test. So when I'm cranking that through there, when I throw to the side of that lay down or the end branches or into that brush pile, I'm not going to be just holding my rod tip down and cranking it down. I'm going to make the cast. I'm going to start reeling. As I hit a branch, I'm going to lift my rod tip up. The bait's going to come up. Then I'm going to reel back down again. And what I'm doing is worming that bait, letting it float back up to the next branch, going down to the next branch, and I'm worming it, what I call worming it through those branches. As I'm doing that, that stop and go, or that stop, pause, and then go, that's what's going to elicit that strike. Very rarely will you get as many strikes on a consistent retrieve on a crankbait than when you're stop, go, or pull and stop, reel, pull and stop. Making those baits do different things, it's what's going to get you more strikes, and in some cases strikes from bigger fish. Okay, you're just going to get that instinct of them to react to that bait and to hit it, and that stop and go or that stop and pause is exactly what's going to do that. If it's slick calm out and I'm not pitching a jig or I'm not pitching a plastic worm around there, another great way that I can get a fish to react is by a square bill. Okay, so if it's not real windy, throwing a square bill, banging it off something, making those fish react. And one of the best things I like about both the DT6 and the Rocco is they're smaller crankbaits. Remember something about small crankbaits. Big fish will always eat small fish. You want a great way to get a reaction strike or to get a bite from a fish when times are tough. Make them react to small baits. Every fish is going to eat a small bait fish. That's why, in my opinion, two of my absolute favorite tools to use when the circumstances dictate are going to be a DT6 and a Rocco. Small baits that get exactly in that perfect strike zone. Now, the rod and reel combo that I use for this, I specifically put together to throw crankbaits from DT4 all the way up to about the DT8, and that includes the square bills, the BX Brat, as well as the OG Rocco. Now, the rod I built from Mudhole, and it's a CB845 blend. It's a 7-foot rod that is a blend of different graphites. It makes it really easy to throw lightweight balsa crankbaits. It also has enough backbone to have exceptional hook setting power, yet have enough parabolic bend to keep those fish hooked. The reel I'm using is from KastKing, and it's the MG12. And the MG12 features the auto adjustment magnetic braking system. What that means is this reel is extremely easy to dial in, and it makes backlashes almost virtually impossible. And it is really, really easy to dial in. Now, the reel weighs only 4.8 ounces. It has over 15 pounds of drag pressure, and it features a 7:5-to-1 gear ratio. Being able to throw light lures, which the MG12 does, I've actually pitched 1/8 ounce finesse jigs with this bait cast reel. It's an exceptional reel for throwing balsa crankbaits. And as I said, with the auto adjustment magnetic braking system, once I dial it in, I can even throw these baits into the wind. It makes my crankbaiting much more efficient between that rod and reel that I put together. Now, if you're interested in anything from KastKing, make sure you check out the description of this video, because I put a 20% off discount code in the description, so you can use it for anything and everything at KastKing. Okay, and there you have it. I hope that helps to distinguish a little bit more for you between round bills and square bills, where, when, and why you should use them. Now, if you like this video, I hope you subscribe. I hope you tell your friends. We got more videos coming out in the near future. Until then, God bless you. I'm Jim Crowley. We'll see you soon.